Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Passing Dimes. My name is Josh Nicol, and really excited for today's guest. He was a member of Team BC's indoor provincial team. He went on to play for UBC. He was on our junior national team for 2 summers. He played pro indoor in Czech, and we got him. We got him on the beach. So happy to have him. So happy to have him move to Toronto and take a shot at this beach thing full time. Welcome to the show, Alex Russell. Alex, thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be part of the show.
Awesome. I love these BC guys because I'd love to hear some stories. You know, I don't think there's a BC Ontario hatred. There's a rivalry there though, so it's good to have you out here and maybe you can bridge the gap for us. I think.
Yeah, a little bit. You guys aren't as bad as everybody makes you out to be.
See, that's a start. That's a start. So we've had Seymour on. We've got you. I think slowly but surely we're gonna get this thing going.
Sounds good.
Except I feel like at Van Open, there's still going to be some unterrible jokes and stuff like that.
I feel like it's well appreciated by the unterrible guys too. So.
Well,
it's good to be the villain every once in a while. You know, you gotta be the villain.
That's true. I think the people who get the most offended are the ones who are like, "Why don't you like me?" But people like Dallas who like embrace the villain stuff, they actually go on to enjoy it, right?
Definitely.
And if you can't skyball, you're going to get booed no matter where you're from. There.
Oh, definitely.
All right, we'll get to that in a second, but let's set the scene here. So, growing up in BC, what was your start into volleyball? Was it like a grade school thing? Was it a sibling thing? Like, how did you start volleyball, and what made you really go all in on this?
Well, both my parents definitely started there. My dad played in the '76 Olympics for Canada. He was the captain of the team at the time, and my mom played for Dalhousie. So they big volleyball fan. All of my older siblings played volleyball. And my dad actually started the Focus Volleyball Club back in BC, which I was a part of starting from like age 13 or even 12, I think. I was playing indoor club volleyball, maybe a year up. And they were my coaches most of the time. Had some other coaches here and there, but my dad coached me in club and then eventually in school. He came to my high school and coached also. So yeah, they were huge in the development of my game. We also played beach volleyball pretty much every summer with my family. My sisters and brothers and cousins and stuff would go to the beach and play on the Sunshine Coast where my family has a place there. So walking distance from beach courts. So it's kind of an all-around family activity.
Now, did you know how challenging that was, like for your mom to play at Dalhousie and for your dad to be Olympian? Like when you were a little kid, did you understand like the magnitude of that, or did it take till like now to realize that how hard those are?
Right? I didn't understand it like even in the slightest. Like now I'm like so proud of like that. Just be like my dad was an Olympian. That's pretty surreal, and obviously that's my goal also to be an Olympian on the beach now. So, and yeah, my mom like has played at a very high level also. It's pretty cool.
Now, when did it click for you during either high school or club that you could go on and play university, or that you had a shot at like a junior national team or a national team thing? Was it early on that you would say like as a 12-year-old you knew this was going to happen, or did it take a little bit later?
Definitely took a little bit later. I was always a tall guy. I had the skills because I was always playing. So I was often a setter growing up and playing different positions, a little bit outside wherever I could get the ball in, because I was playing Team BC like when I was 2 years too young to be playing, and because my dad was the coach around, so it would just get me in there or whatever, and I would just set these bigger guys, and they all loved it. Like I'd get like a block once in a while and they'd go crazy because this young kid's blocking like the superstar left side or whatever. But I never really I always wanted to go to UBC. I remember that, or SFU, because I knew those were the good schools in BC. And then as I kind of got older, I was like, oh, maybe like volleyball, like I'm doing pretty good at this. Like a lot of the other guys my age are talking about, going to these schools or whatever. Started looking at other options, but I ended up going back to like what I had thought as a kid, like, oh, UBC is like one of the best schools. And yeah, stayed closer to home, which is cool.
Nice. And what did you study when you were at UBC?
Civil engineering. And kind of a funny story that Richard Czech was a coach at UBC, for those of you who don't know. During my time, he told when I graduated, I originally wanted to go to mechanical engineering, and and it didn't fit with like the volleyball schedule, like because it was 9 to 5, like no exceptions. I even tried talking to like the dean of applied science about that, but they couldn't be a little bit lenient. So I just went into my second choice, which was civil engineering. And yeah, Rich was like, yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, wasn't his choice, but it was like, no, there wasn't even a thought that I would kind of not do volleyball or like try and change the volleyball, not make practices or something. It was like, I was there for volleyball, and then I did an engineering degree.
Yeah, friend of the show, Alex Poldman, when he was at Waterloo, he took engineering, and he mentioned that some of his profs are just like, how are you a varsity athlete? There's kids who just do school, and they struggle with the time management, right? So definitely. You being a Can West guy where the travel's pretty intense, and obviously you being a big part of the team, how did you find you managed that? Because like I said, being an engineer student at baseline is a lot, but then you add in varsity and travel, and you guys are going across provinces to play. Like, how did you fit it all in?
Yeah, it was kind of nice. Like, obviously the support from like Richard and Matt Laborde was the assistant coach at the time. They'd give us, they'd support us to like be studying, during our breaks and whatever, because as I said, UBC is pretty prestigious academically. So they knew that a lot of the guys there were not just there for volleyball. And they talked a lot about creating individuals that like they wanted to let us become men or whatever, as it went on. And I think they were a big help in like letting us have the time to pursue academics, even on the road and whatnot, right?
So with your Team BC days, so here in Ontario, you attend what's called like a high performance center, and then the provincial team gets selected from there, and then you go to I guess it would have been called National Team Challenge Cup when you were playing. Does BC have a similar format, or were you identified, or how did you kind of get involved with the provincial team ranks and then obviously leverage that into a national team opportunity?
I don't think we have quite the same. There's a high performance camp, which they choose it from, but it's not really like, it doesn't run for a long time. It's just a day or two, I think. And it's basically just a selection camp from there. And, I've had a number of Team BC coaches over the year, and I feel I really like the Team BC program because you don't necessarily have the same coach every year. They'll kind of switch it up. So, like, for example, I've had Pat Henley as a coach, Ben Josephson as a coach, and just like seeing different perspectives from all these different like mindsets is really great, I think, and that develops you so much as a player, I think.
Any examples you could kind of give us that what influence a provincial team coach could have on you? Because you only get them for a couple of weeks, right? I know it is a high performance tournament, but it's not like as long as a club season or high school season, right?
Not quite.
Anything that really clicked for you that either like Henley or Benjo were able to give you?
Well, yeah, Henley definitely about being mentally tough. I think he's all about that, and he instilled. I remember being at practice, Team BC practice, in TRU and Kamloops, and just like serving balls, and Pat's just yelling, "That's a muffin, Russell! That's an absolute muffin!" And just like getting on me, like every serve had to be aggressive, and I pretty much say that every time I go back to serve, I'm going to be aggressive back there. It's the same serving pattern, and when you learn something like that, I think that early, I feel like it really gets ingrained in you, and like it's kind of like the standard. Like, you don't take one serve off. You're going back, you're doing your routine, and you're going to be aggressive every time. And I love that, and that's what I say to my partner every time Liam goes back. I'm aggressive serve, let's go. Like we got to stay on these guys.
Nice. So then you advance to UBC, and I think the Can West Conference to me is a little bit unique, where the OUA and RSEQ, like, we play a schedule where we might play somebody in November and you don't play them again until February, where you guys play back-to-backs, right? And I think that allows teams to game plan, but then also adjust after the first night, right? So kind of walk us through what Richard Schick or UBC coaches would want to do as far as like, okay, we just played them Friday night. Now what does like Saturday morning look like so you don't do the same thing, right? Like, or they've adjusted, so now we got to adjust, and like the cat and mouse game really begins, right?
Definitely, and I think it depends a lot on the outcome of the first game, right? If something worked, we're gonna try and do it again. That's my mantra. Also, it's like, but I think there is a little bit of cat and mouse. It's like, this worked, but we have to kind of be aware that they may adjust on the second night to this, because of how well it worked. I don't. It's a quick turnaround, really. Like that night, and then maybe you watch a little bit. Usually, it's more so the coaches watching that night, the game back. I know they stayed up pretty late watching game film, trying to figure out what we need to adjust for the second night, and then in the morning, we're watching game film. We have our serve and pass. Maybe we watch individually more game film in the afternoon, and kind of figure out either what went wrong, what went right, what adjustments need to be made. There's quite some like turn of events, right? Like you'll see 3 straight and then 3 straight the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not unheard of. And sometimes like we've had flights. I remember one time, I think we were flying to Saskatoon. We were playing U of S, and we got caught in Calgary overnight. Luckily, one of Milan Nikic, who was my setter at UBC, has a place there. His dad was there, so the whole team stayed over in Milan Nikic's place in Calgary, and we're all sleeping on the floor in the basement. Like I don't know. We get there and it's 3 a.m. by the time we get there, and we're playing the next day, and we eventually get to Saskatchewan, like pretty much then head to the game, and we're maybe lucky if you got 5 hours of sleep the night before. We felt confident going in the game, but we absolutely got slapped that. And then, but then we took a breath, came back, and we slapped them right back the next night. So it's like you said, it can create quite a storyline, which is kind of cool. But you really have to come out hot the first night usually.
Now, as a university middle, what would your prep involve? Like, what do you like to see when you're doing any tactical prep against a team? Are you a big rotation guy? Do you want to study the setters? Like, would you know what rotation Schick would want to start in? Like, how in depth would you go with it, or were you kind of just free flowing and you were going to block whoever they set?
I love watching video, and I would love to watch the setter over and over. Like, I feel like once I've seen the setter make a set a certain number of times, then I think watching the same video actually helps, because once I watch it the first time I've seen it, the second time I may be able to anticipate it because I've seen it before. And then when I see a similar kind of maybe he's moving back and he's going to shoot the ball forward, if I see that in game the third time, I've already left, and I'm going to close that block the split second earlier that you need to be pressed on the block. And I felt I feel like a lot of middles don't really understand that. It's about seeing a setter make a set a certain number of times. And I would actually ask in the Czech Republic Pro, for extra video on setters, because I felt like that was the difference in the game for me, to make blocks and not make blocks.
Now, I hear a lot of coaches, and myself, I've tried teaching this over the years with varied degrees of success. Are you a big eye work guy where you talk about ball setter, ball hitter? Do you consciously go through that sequence, or are you mostly looking at the setter and then do your eyes shift to who you're closing your block with, or do you actually get eyes on the hitter pretty early?
I did. That's how I started learning also. Ball setter, ball hitter. I think after a certain point, that's a great place to start. I think all middle blockers especially, but all blockers should learn that cue movement. But I think after a certain while, it's really all, like you said, about watching the setter. And then from there, you immediately, I think I take a glance towards, like you said, the feet, but I'm not thinking about that at all. Now it's the hitter, and it's just their arm swing, where their shoulders are facing, and it's kind of just being hungry. You're I'm going to block you, and I'm going to reach over the net, and there's going to be nowhere to go. And I think when you have that mentality, that's when you get the block. If you're thinking about other things, or where their shoulders too much, I think you got to get that kind of sense of urgency, like Glenn Hoag one day I was at national team practice, junior national team practice, and he comes up to me. We had just done a blocking drill, and he comes up to me with an iPad and shows me a picture of like, I think it was like a bear or some kind of like mountain lion, and it was just had its like just had its claws out, ready to go, like pouncing on. Like he's like, this is what you have to look like when you're blocking, like aggressive. Like I guess I'm saying that again, like, but you know, you got to be aggressive at certain points in the game, and blocking's definitely one of them. And it feels really good when you get that right.
Yeah, if anyone's been on YouTube and watched your highlights, big block silly guy.
Yeah.
Like it's,
well, that's the most fun. Like somebody's trying to do something, and you're like, no, not today.
Now, do any situations kind of influence your decision making? Like little things like if the middle starts behind the setter, can you kind of predict like just some laws of volleyball about like if they can't hit a push quick, are you then just alerting on the outsides, or is there anything that you could maybe advance some of our younger middles listening about? I understand the pureness of watching ball setter, ball hitter, but is there any like just situations where you maybe alert for, all right, the setter's in 4, so I know this is a tough situation, so maybe we can get them out of system earlier, or is there anything to kind of look for about how they can just be a little bit earlier or maybe aware of what's happening?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it before, like if the ball's coming from behind the setter, like that, some setters will not set middle from that. If the ball's coming from in front of the setter, a lot of setters feel more comfortable. Like that's like the perfect play. That's a lot of teams, especially younger teams, will just introduce balls to like a libero in 5 for like middle practice, where they're not used to having that ball come over their shoulder and set the middle. It could be a bit tougher. And like you said, if a middle is coming from 2, so from behind the setter, a lot of players will tend to swing to 1. So you're gonna like, you kind of, I like to like show them 1 even more, and then jump into it and take it away. But then there's the game. Then you kind of like do that one time. Then you're like set up the same way. Maybe you shuffle in and jump back to 5 the second time. It's like Richard Czech always talked about playing the game within the game. He would call it, and it's just like, you know, you're gonna do something one time, but the next time you might do something different. Yeah, sometimes like it's also about setter positioning. When we look at it, charts with my professional team, we'd look at where the setter would set it along the net. So when they're pushed back, maybe the setter only likes the short distance set. So I might just release earlier or come along with the setter because they like the back set for when they're pushed back to 2. So I can come along with the middle, move along with it, kind of disrespect that long distance set because I know this setter, you know, doesn't like to push it out. But a different setter, he might be that guy that loves the flashy long set away from the movement of the pass. So it's kind of depends on the setter a little bit, but there are definite cues you can pick up on.
Now, we were lucky enough to have you out to one of our club practices, and I remember Jake and I were just kind of picking your brain, and we had kind of determined that middle's kind of an under-coached position. I think because I think you need to be a decent level middle to know the cat and mouse things of the game within the game going. Like I think coaches have a general idea, but where do you think you experienced the most growth? Was it kind of just self-taught and going through situations, or was your dad a big influence? Because I think if there is a position that's undercoached indoor youth volleyball right now, I'd say the middles get the least specialized training, I should say.
I would agree. And like my dad didn't really coach me when I was developing as a middle as much. Like I said, when I was younger, he was kind of putting me in different positions. And I'm thankful that I think I got a lot of ball control work from that. I think the first time it was a bit with Rich at a high performance camp. I remember that was the first time I did kind of like more significant mental blocking work. But a big part of my development was Matt Laborde. And as you said, he was a middle blocker at UBC. He eventually moved out to the outside, but he was a middle blocker at UBC, and he also played professional for 2 years. And so him, like, and he could do all these things. I'd seen him in practice. I've seen him on video doing all these moves. So it's also kind of like a trust thing. Like as a player, to be able to see somebody do the plays that you're trying to do. It's like, okay, like that's what it looks like, and that's helpful for me to see what it looks like and then go from there. So Matt Laborde was definitely a huge part. I think the systems that I got taught with the junior national team also like helped me kind of like skyrocket into like being a better blocker. Like, all right, like I kind of learned one system at UBC a little bit different with the junior national team, and like I'm kind of thinking like what's working for me now, and then now I kind of start becoming my own type of player, right? And that's when I think like good middles, like when you get shown different types of coaching, then you can kind of be like, like I start really thinking about your perspective on the game and figure out what works for you.
Yeah, let's segue there to the junior national team. So was your experience that you go to Gatineau, there's just an army of guys there, but there's also an army of coaches and people with clipboards and stats? Like, what was your first impression of trying out for Team Canada? Were you identified and invited, or were you just a walk-on, show up at tryouts and see how it goes?
So it was like the Challenge Cup. So I was with Team BC actually, and so I was a middle blocker, but there were some injuries on our team, so I ended up passing and hitting. I think I passed, but hit out of the right side, and I still made the team as a middle blocker because I think they saw a little bit early on in the tournament. Then after the injuries, they're like, maybe they just saw good blocking in a big guy that could play volleyball, I imagine. But I was just there to compete with Team BC. It was my first instinct. I honestly, I knew that like junior national team was like an option like from this, but I wasn't really expecting to make it. I imagine, I guess would be how I'd explain it. But then once we had played the tournament and guys were talking about it, they're like, oh, like Russ, you could be on the team, and I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great.
So it wouldn't be a Passing Dimes episode if we didn't name drop. So who was on your squad? I think Jeremy Davies was on that squad. Like, who else would have been around that year for that cycle?
So Milan, the setter from UBC with me. Jared Ireland was also from UBC. We had Riley Barnes, Steve Marr, Danny Demienko. I'm going to miss a bunch of people. Jason McCarthy was on. I was there for 2 years, so some of these might be, Casey Showden. Who else was on that team?
And Dave Preston was the coach for both cycles.
Dave Preston was the coach for both, because it was kind of a cycle thing. Like the first year we played the Norsecas, which were in Colorado Springs, and we ended up with the silver medal, which was kind of disappointing against the U.S., but still a good showing, which qualified us for Worlds the next year, which was in Turkey. So it was kind of like a little cycle there with the guys, and the core group stayed the same, with Riley and Steve on the outside for the most part. There was also Bruno Lorty was a guy on the squad. It's a pretty talented group of people. You look at that, there's a number of guys on the national team now. So
now, what do you remember from that experience? Because you would have went to that Norseca, I guess, as a Team BC guy. So before university, you would have played for Canada, right? So you were quite young.
That was the year. I think it was the summer after my first year of university.
Oh, okay. So you did have a comparison that you had played club at a high level, then you go to university, and then
I went to.
So what do you remember about that? Was there much different in terms of the speed of the game, the preparation, or the systems that Preston and the rest of the coaches wanted you to run, or was it pretty well status quo from what you were used to?
It was a big change, I think, and that was the first time I was kind of like just doing volleyball, because although like Team BC, it was kind of like that, but this was like next level. Like we were working out a lot harder, and I got a lot stronger in that like summer, and I remember coming back to UBC afterwards and just being like, and everybody being like, oh, Alex is like, I was now like the guy, the middle of our team, right? Just coming back as a second year. And then, so the junior national team, Dave Preston, he was looking at different stats that I'd never looked at before. It was definitely eye-opening and a great experience. Like, junior national team, I think made me the player I am today, right?
Now, did you start thinking about going pro, or did you have to finish up university before you started to get there? Like, were coaches in your ear, or did there happen to be any agents at World Championships? Like, when did that kind of spark your mind that you could play this game for a living?
I mean, I that was always in the back of my mind, like to play professionally, but nobody was really approaching me at that time about going to play pro, and I was always going to finish my degree. That was like, instilled upon me, like education's super important. I was going to finish that first, and then, but I was always of the mindset. I was like, yeah, like get to play volleyball, go to Europe, like get paid for it. That's an absolute no-brainer.
So help us out here, because every time I ask this question, I get kind of a unique twist on it. Where, to use like the hockey analogy, it seems like you either go like the school route or the junior B or junior A level, and like you get drafted, you get identified, and you follow this pipeline, and it seems pretty smooth and everybody's aware of it. Where volleyball, even hiring your agent's kind of an adventure, right? Because sometimes people just take a shot in the dark. Sometimes it's a friend of a friend that you just like, oh, I was with this agent, or an alumni at the same university. Like, how did you kind of start the conversation? Like, was your agent based in Canada, or were they European? And then how did you decide to go to the Czech? Like, out of all the countries that maybe gave you an offer, how do you pick which team you're going to with no information of your own, right?
Yeah, it was interesting, and I kind of went off people that had played before, like older UBC guys or alumni, and everybody's helpful, guys I knew from the beach, and I ended up with like a friend of a friend who recommended this agent. Wasn't my first choice. I had a lot of agents talking to me once I graduated from UBC and asking like, oh, if you need an agent, like you could sign this contract. But I went with a European guy, which I thought was good. He actually came to one of the games and like met me in person. Well, when I was there, which was nice. So from there. Sorry, I forgot the other part.
Oh, I was just wondering, like, how did you determine that you were going to play in the Czech? Like,
Oh yeah.
did you know anyone who had played there before? Or did the agent just kind of tell you, this is a good deal, you should take it? Because you've probably never met your club until you land on the plane and you're their property, right? Like, how do you determine that that's the spot for you?
Definitely. I had like a couple choices, but in my first year it was not as great. So it wasn't my first like option available, but it was like pretty good paying, and like I always wanted to visit the Czech Republic, which is cool. And I had heard of Canadians in that league saying it was like actually pretty decent level. So I was pretty excited to get that opportunity, and my agent kind of was also hyping it up a little bit. It was a really good opportunity. This club will pay you and stuff like that, which is pretty important because that does happen. People not getting paid and stuff like that. So I think it was a really good choice in the end, and I ended up re-signing with them, like a little bit more money and better housing place and stuff like that. So, and they were really nice to me the whole time. So they wanted me to come back for a third year, but the beach was too tantalizing to leave.
So, an athlete of your caliber, how did you feel about the volleyball contracts kind of being one at a time? Like, we had Becky Pavitt on the show, and she liked it because it felt like she was betting on herself, and if she liked the place, she might renegotiate and try to stay there, or she felt like she could always try to upgrade, right? Like, did you like the idea of a one-year contract, or did you want more like security?
Oh no, I was super happy with the 1 year contract because in my mind I was like, yeah, this is like, it was a good contract and definitely great for my first year, but I was like, I think I deserve more than this, but for my first year, this will be okay, and I'll kind of work my way up from there. And that's why I really enjoy the 1 year contract deal, because if you don't like it somewhere, you can move somewhere else. You can go to a different country, experience different cultures. I ended up really liking it, so I decided to stay where I was. But I think it's pretty cool that after a year with a club, you can kind of reevaluate where you're at and how the club was, and decide where you want to go now.
Now, I should know the answer to this because we had Mark Wilson on the show, who's still over in Czech and really enjoying it. But what was the situation on your team as far as like North Americans or foreigners? Was there any like language challenge with your coach, or was everything in English and you were smooth sailing? Or
the first year, my coach didn't speak English at all. And so we had like our captain translating to us, and it was pretty funny, like trying to decipher what the drills were going on. I was trying to learn Czech a little bit by little bit, and it worked to a certain degree. And I especially know like the volleyball knowledge and like definitely numbers and stuff like that. And then we had a different coach come in like halfway through that season actually, and he spoke Czech and French, and luckily I speak French, so it was him speaking Czech to all the Czech guys, then speaking French to me, and me speaking English to all the Americans and Colombians and other people that spoke English or didn't quite speak English, but that was the closest thing they were going to get.
So it sounds pretty unique. So with the Czech League, how many foreigners were on your team, and how many like native Czech guys would have been on your squad?
It was about half and half, actually. It's unlimited in the Czech League, so you can have as many foreigners as you want, as opposed to a lot of leagues where there'll be a cap at maybe 3 is kind of common, which made it kind of cool for me because I got to meet people from around the world. There were 2 Americans on the team in my second year. In my first year, I was living with a guy from Colombia who was another middle blocker, and it was really fun. There was a guy from Puerto Rico, some guys from the Ukraine and Slovakian, which is kind of still, and there was a Latvian and a Serbian also. So I played with a lot of different cultures, which I think is interesting to see kind of different mentalities from different cultures. Even if it's just one player, I think you get a little glimpse into what the volleyball systems are like in different countries.
Now, how did you enjoy the lifestyle in Czech? Because one thing I remember from our interview with Mark is they crack down on drinking and driving. Like there's no tolerance for it, which he said the ripple effect of that is every neighborhood has a pub in it, right? So there's a big sense of community, right? So would the squad go out for Pilsners after practice or after a game, or did you get a sense that like the fan club would recognize you if you did walk into a pub? Like what was the vibe in your town or city? Like first of all, where were you, I guess? What city were you in?
So I was in a town called Odolina Voda. Small town of 5,000 people, pretty close to Prague, but enough outside that it was farmland for sure.
Nice.
And the sponsor was this airplane manufacturer. So every year we went on a tour of the airplane manufacturing place, which was pretty cool. And so most of the town worked there. And like that was kind of why the town existed, I guess. And then they had a professional volleyball team, which was pretty cool. And so walking around town, people definitely knew like I was a volleyball player. Like they'd wave and say hi, and like if it was a game day, like they'd like go arrow, like good luck today, which was pretty cool. And like you said, yeah, and the guys did like to drink a lot, so we'd go for like a beer or 2 after practice, which was just normal in that cultural and then but like the people would recognize us, but a lot of times they were just so happy to see us, and like I said, it's their culture, so like for them to see us like have a beer after practice like was pretty normal. Mm-hmm. Like it'd be kind of weird if they didn't see us around every once in a while. So it was a lot of fun.
So in your town, would they have a hockey team or a soccer or football team, or was volleyball like the big show in town? Like, would you get a good crowd out to your matches?
Yeah, it wasn't that big of a venue, but it was packed. Oh my gosh, playing at home was the best. It's kind of, if you can picture it, it's kind of like in a hole, and then the stands are above you, and it is loud in there, and there are about 5 or 6 guys that come with these big bass drums and just pound while the other team is trying to serve and just yelling. And they love it there. Like it's super fun to play. And I like playing up to the crowd, and like couldn't have asked for more. That's definitely part of why I enjoyed it there so much.
Nice. Very cool. So you did mention you had a chance to return, but you gave this beach thing a shot. So when did you start to consider it? And I'll admit this, sometimes us Ontario guys, that just because we don't know who you are, people assume you're new to beach, but you're not new to beach. You grew up playing, you've been in these clivers, you've been at Van Open, you're playing on the other coast, so we didn't get to see you play, right? So when was your big introduction to beach, and then what made you kind of flip the switch and try to, turn this into your career versus indoor?
Well, like I said, I started with my family, but I've got to give a big shout out to Matt Laborde, the assistant coach at UBC, who kind of, especially after my first year at UBC, kind of was like, oh, like we're gonna like have a training session. Like he played with a guy named Johnny Whitcar, well known on the West Coast. Johnny and Maddie have won a lot of Clivers, and like they brought me out, kind of took me under their wings, and they're like, this guy is going to be a good beach volleyball player, you know. And then Cliver, who runs the tournaments there, he helps out a lot of the UBC practices while I was playing. So there was that kind of connection there, and my dad and Cliver are great friends too. So there was no way I wasn't going to be playing Clivers. I think my first Cliver, I was either 15 or 16 playing with my dad. And I remember looking at these guys just being like, wow, this is unreal. Like, I think it was Ryan Gandy, who's my height or a bit taller than me, and Chong, this really, really athletic guy. And Chong was doing push-ups in between sets. And I was like, oh, I have to start doing push-ups like all the time. Like I was like, if I want to be as good as these guys, I have to start doing this. And so like I was like, I knew I wanted to win a Cliver someday, and took a while. Like, and all the guys are super, super fun. Like helping me. Like, you know, I was playing with like guys my age. Then you start playing with guys a lot older than you. Then you kind of bounce around and like find like who you want to play with. And a lot of the UBC guys opened up, and like Rob Gotch playing with me. It was the first guy I ever won a tournament with. And yeah, Clivers are a blast. That's definitely a fact.
So it sounds like it was just something you knew because obviously your dad's involvement, or just through different guys you grew up with, right? So there wasn't like an initiation phase where we've had guys on like Zaid or Joel Hannon who talk about like when they felt accepted by the group. It sounded like you were, upon arrival, it was just something you knew and everybody knew of you, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I think like guys will talk about playing me now, and they're like, I remember you, and like we were beating you, and now the tables have turned. But he's like, I remember beating you, but you were spin serving as like a 15-year-old, and like and like you were losing and you started spin serving. And I was like, and he was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, one day that kid's gonna be okay. And yeah, like a lot of the point of the Clivers, like Clivers talked to me about this, is so that, you know, up and comers can compete and be on the national team and create that West Coast presence, you know. And so I think I've talked to a lot of them, and like everybody's super pumped that like finally we have like one West Coast. Like we've had other guys, but I have been really involved with that community for a while now, and hopefully there's a lot of up and comers from there that I think will have a good shot at making the national team in the years to come, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so I guess if our listeners, if maybe this is the first episode, maybe you got them hooked, but in your own words, can you kind of just describe the kids' beach scene? And I know it's getting old. Everyone who's around it, I kind of bring up because I think it is a pretty cool thing where I was with Logan Mend and Thomas Soar. We went out there to a Cliver, and it was just such a cool vibe that everybody shows up and you're putting down lines and putting up nets, and just the culture of like, I remember Dan Caverly won prize money. He couldn't make it, so he gave Jim money and said, buy a round. Like there's just such like a foundation layer of culture there that it was just neat to see and be a part of. That this is super high performance. Like I think we lost to you in the quarters. Nick Del Bianco was there. Caverly was playing with a different guy. Jake McNeil and Gabe Berlaku made the finals. Laborde played. Like it was like a pretty long list of just like, wow, this is such a good tournament. But really it was like a Saturday organized tournament by the guys, right? So just kind of as a local, go into details about like, how did the kids scene turn out this way with the challenge court and the Clivers and everything else, the Van Open? Like why is everyone so beach volleyball crazy, but still such a good community?
Well, I think it started with Cliver and his group of friends, and you know, what they say every time, it's for the players by the players, right? So everybody's helping out, and like it's just amazing how many people. There's guys that come down to set up nets at 7 a.m. I will come, but there are guys that come and they don't even play in the tournament. Like they're coming down at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to set up nets and lines, possibly in the rain because we're in Vancouver, and they they're not even going to play in the tournament, and it's just amazing. Like Doug Pinton, I know has come and set up, and he helps Cliver bring everything out from his truck, because there's sometimes 12, maybe more courts on Kitts Beach, and it's so all the players kind of chip in and help take the nets down at the end of the day, and it's all the money gets put back into the players. And then you have Seymour and Danny Moore, who started More for Less, the beer sales at barley waters. They serve barley waters and apple juice at the beach, and all the money they made from that has gone back into buying new lines and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it has to do with people kind of, recognizing what the community is and giving back. And I would love to keep giving back to the community as much as I can over the years, because it gave me so much to be thankful for. And yeah, if I can help set up, that's the least I can do.
Now, the Van Open has really grown into something special because of obviously some great sponsors and people in the community with the prize money and the way they did the grandstands and stuff. But even years back, before the prize money was this big, it was still probably the best event in Canada. So as a guy who's seen it kind of grow into what it is now, what stands out in your mind that makes that, again, another super high performance event, but there's still a big sense of community where as soon as you get knocked out, you're in the beer garden, you're still involved. Like, nobody's in a bad mood there. It doesn't seem like at a Van Open, right?
Yeah, I think it's the KBVA kind of creates that environment there, right? And now they have the WKBVA, so the women have started kind of their thing, and when you bring it all together at the Van Open, it's like the thing you're looking forward to all summer. It's like the best thing, the best part of the summer, and the Vancouver Open. Everybody's kind of like talking about it, like who's playing with who at the beginning of the summer, and when it finally happens, like, you're just having a blast. Like win or lose, like, obviously everybody wants to do well, but if you're not, you're in the beer garden, and like, that's a win in its own right. Like, you're going to be having a good day.
Awesome. Yeah. So hopefully that clears anything up for anyone who sees you on the national team and go, oh, this guy must just be an indoor guy giving this beach thing a shot. No, you've been a beach guy for years and you put your time in. It's just now other provinces get to see you, and obviously all of Canada gets to cheer for you now. So what kind of changed for you? There's rumors that maybe Grant O'Gorman had some influence over you, or what really made you come out to nationals, come out to selection camp and give this beach thing a shot? Because you had to relocate. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just going to say it. You're not getting rich doing this, at least not now, without the prize money and everything else. So what kind of influenced your decision to move to Toronto and try this beach thing?
Yeah, true. I feel like I've been getting a little bit better every year, and I've kind of had it in the back of my mind. Like, I remember years ago, like, me and Brian Hebert, who was a good player in BC and also a ref, he's talking to me about, like, I really see it. Like, you could have a shot at this, like, if you wanted to do it now. Like, and I was like, yeah, but like this indoor thing, like, it's guaranteed money over there, and then playing with Grant at Seaside this year. Seaside is another great tournament, by the way, down in Oregon, which is amazing. If you've never heard of it, I would look that up as well. But Grant was kind of in my ear, telling me a little bit more about, what it would look like, and kind of getting the picture in my mind, and like, like, it's like doable. Like, if you start now, like, it's kind of a good time. Like, it's an Olympic year, but then looking forward to like the next Olympics and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, this is sounding more and more doable. And a lot of thanks to him for kind of nudging me in that direction, for sure. And he got me connected with you, and then I ended up staying at your place for nationals. Thanks again for that. And yeah, so I'm super happy with my decision so far.
So let it be known then, if any other BC people want to make the switch, that Dan Caverly, this is a direct message to you. It's not too late if you want to give it a shot. Or I know the Pacific Beach Volleyball Club's got a good thing going, or any of those Kitts guys, or the up-and-comers. Maybe there's a 15-year-old Alex Russell out there listening who's already spin serving and wants to give it a shot. But it's not so bad out here, I don't think.
It's not so bad. I mean, the cold it's raining in Vancouver, but there's some nice days here.
I know you don't get the ocean and the mountains and everything else, but if Megan and Nicole can do it and you can do it, then I feel like the train's left the station. We've got some momentum. We're going to get some more people from across Canada to come, and it's going to be a good thing. So I'm glad you're enjoying it so far, and hopefully you could spread the word. So you and Liam have already competed in one event.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first international experience like at the Cook Islands One Star?
Yeah, it was really cool. So Cook Islands, for those of you who don't know, is an island off the coast of New Zealand, and it's a group of islands, and this is one of 16 is Rarotonga, where we were playing, and it's a pretty cool place. Like, you could drive around the island in about an hour or so, and there are two buses that go on the island. One goes clockwise and the other goes anti-clockwise. So it's pretty funny. The tournament itself was a huge eye-opener for me, just to kind of see what it was like on the world stage, what it took, and like kind of how tournaments are run a little bit. And it was a big learning experience. I think we could have done a lot better than we did. We ended up finishing 5th to a good American team, but we definitely had more in us. And I'm excited to learn from that and bring it back into the next event we have, for sure.
Yeah, that was a pleasant sign for me that you guys get home and I go, oh, like, good result, man. Congrats on the 5th. And you go, no, we could have done better. And it's good that you just didn't hang your hat and say, like, yeah, top 5 with my first international tournament. This is going to be easy. Like, you wanted more and you've been putting in the work. So what's next for you, Liam? I understand you got NORCECA Trials. Is it going to be an event that you guys are going to play in? And then what do you think is going to be your next World Tour event?
Well, we're kind of struggling. We're trying to get into the Cambodia's 2-star right now, but we're a little bit down on the list because of points, since that was my first event on the World Tour. So there is another 1-star in Malaysia coming up after that, which will definitely be doable for us. But hopefully we could maybe sneak into this Cambodia one, and then after that is a 3-star in Australia, depending on points again. But if not, hopefully we do well at the NORCECA Trials, and when the NORCECA schedule comes out, we get to compete in more of those to get those points higher, so we can make some of the bigger tournaments, for sure.
Nice. And my last beach question, I've gone on about this, but one thing that was cool was when we had Ben Saxton on the show, he kind of influenced, inspired me, whatever you want to call it. We kind of ran a pilot of his league here, and you got a chance to play in it for a couple weeks. Since you've probably seen it out west, actually you would have been in Czech, so you didn't get a chance to see the original, but now that you've experienced it, how do you think that's going to help what the NBVL is doing and what we're doing out here to kind of, I don't want to say grow the sport of beach volleyball, but give it more attention, give it more awareness? Like, how did you enjoy playing in the league? You got to partner with Jake McNeil. The format's kind of cool. Just tell me about your experience and what you learned from the league, I guess.
Yeah, I had a blast playing in it, and I didn't really know what to expect going in. And so the format itself was pretty cool because you're paired with a team of the opposite gender. So then if your team wins and your other team loses, then you'll go to what we call, it's apparently overtime, but me and Jake called it the golden set, which I kind of liked, and which is a set to 15 in which each game, girls and guys, takes 1 point and then it alternates. So if you win your point, then your girls' team gets to serve and vice versa. So playing in one of those in the very first time I played in the league was really cool. I think the league is great because it gives a chance for a lot of people in the community to maybe come out and see like national team players play at like a local level. And it also gives a chance for maybe some players who don't have an opportunity to play as much as they'd like to on the World Tour to get like high quality games in against high quality teams, which is really cool. And like the quality of that volleyball is just phenomenal. And to get it like on a competitive level like that, you can't go wrong doing that. That's cool.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully building the bridge once again from, all those unterrible chants. I shouldn't say that because when I was out there, everybody was super nice to me and super inclusive. It's just sometimes our players, mostly Dallas, would come back and say like, oh, they chirped me about this or they chirped me about that. But, it's good people. I think it's a good rivalry, and I think it's good for Canadian volleyball that we don't always have to love each other, that we can, chirping's entertaining. It gets the people going, and it's fun. I think, right? It's not. I don't feel like it's a hatred thing.
No, we're just giving you a hard time, and like, hey, you know, if we came up to nationals or whatever, and you gave us a hard time, we can have a beer after. It's all in good fun.
Awesome. So hopefully we can get you back on the show. If not, a few more BC people are just dying to be on the show. You know, we were trying to get Heebs. We're trying to get a few other people. I think Jody would be great with Wico Bevo. There's so many people. It's a weekly show, but we're getting down our list. So I think the more people, the better. I mean, a Seymour Sandy episode, I feel like that would be. We might have to do that one after dark. That might have to be a paid-for episode because we just can't give away those stories for free. But we'll find a way. But anyways, thanks for coming on the show, telling us the stories, and kind of giving us an insight of not only your volleyball journey, but the good thing that BC's got going. And like I said, hopefully this inspires a few more people to give it a shot. And I want to thank you for coming out and making our national team better. You know, we were joking the other day that Mike Latinga used to be the biggest blocker. Now he might be on the smaller side with you, Hoey. Like, we got some big boys. Chris Tao isn't here yet, but I think the national team's trending in the right direction, and you're a big part of that. So thanks for being on the show, and thanks for making this dive into beach.
Thanks for having me.